Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe's Classic Video Games back with another cool pinball repair video for you this evening. I don't know why my voice sounds so screwed up today. I've been coughing, but I'm not sick. I don't know, it's just something weird going around. Anyway, you don't want to get sick. I'm filming this in the middle of May. You don't want to get a cold in May. That ain't good. But we've been working on the I feel great though. We've been working on the Chicago Coins GUNSMOKE pinball machine, and we finally got our parts in. So, on the previous video, we figured out that this thing had been hacked. They've hacked it. Now, obviously, they've repainted it the wrong color. I thought for a minute maybe it was a prototype because of the weird hacks that we found. If you didn't see that video, go back and watch it. But I don't think it's a prototype because you can see the original purple paint underneath over here where it's been damaged a little bit. So I think it's just they repainted a stock Chicago coin GUNSMOKE. This is about the third one of these we've had. It's a cool game. Just got a cool Western theme. It has the cool GUNSMOKE flash unit on the back. So basically, certain point of the game, these start cycling. Ding, 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 ding. And then you hit the button on the front of it to stop it. Right? And then you score whatever is lit there, and then it kicks the ball out, or whatever it's doing. So it's a cool game. This one, though, a gentleman brought us. He said he knew that it wasn't right. He bought it off somebody, and he wanted us to fix it up. So we told him we'd be happy to. We're finding all kinds of weird things on it, though. For instance, the start button is missing. So I have no clue how they were starting this game. When we got it in, we plugged it in. You can see that on the previous video. And the thing would come up in the middle of a game because they had the lock relay tied shut. So it would never stop playing the same ball, but whenever you played the ball, it wouldn't score and all kinds of crap like that. It's been stuck on 14 points the whole time. Okay. Another thing they did was this back glass is plexiglass, which is fine because it's in perfect shape. Except for this. They covered up the credit window, and this is driving the customer crazy. He don't like that at all. Right? So he said he's going to get another back glass. Mainly because of that. I might try to mess with it and see if I can save it for him. Because, I mean, that's minor. If I could get that back off that window and then draw a little black line in there, it's saving from having to buy a whole nother glass, And so then the other thing that he wanted us to rectify is that the replay unit is missing out of the back of it. Now, they called it a replay unit for a while, and they called it a credit unit for a while, but it's the wheel that shows you how many credits are on the game. You wouldn't think that'd be that big of a deal, but there is a switch on that determines whether or not you can start a game. So when you hit the start button, if you have credits on the game, which means if the switch on this replay unit is closed, it will let you start a game. If you are down to 0 credits and it says 0 on the wheel, a switch is opened, and then when you hit start, nothing can happen. Well, when you've got wires just cut and not connected, the switch is open, right? So 2 of these wires are that switch, and they're not connected. So I don't know how this thing was ever running. Now, you might say, oh, well, it was working fine, and they just took the thing out of it. Nope, it gets weirder. I'll show you the other 2 things that we found that make absolutely 0 sense. So one is there's a switch here that is not on a stock GUNSMOKE. And I can't even tell where in the world the wires go. They look original. But I don't believe that they are. They're done really well, though. You can't really tell where they added the wires. And then you have this wire that's just hanging here. I have no clue what it goes to. And then you have this wire, which is the power lead that runs up to the out-hole kicker. This wire here. Right? Somehow there is an extra lead that's not on a regular GUNSMOKE. They've added that in. That's why we thought maybe it was a prototype. And then you have mounting brackets here where it looks like they had a kicker added here. Maybe it was some kind of auto launch or something. I don't know. We can't figure it out. But if you look at a regular GUNSMOKE, this is completely clean. None of this is involved, but it hasn't just been hacked in. It's like it's part of the loom. Makes no sense. Okay? The start button, like I said, has been moved out of the way, and they put a bolt where the start button's supposed to go. So how do you ever start a game if it's like that? Makes no sense. That tape that's on there, by the way, is original. That's factory tape. It's just so that it doesn't get caught in the crease of the door there. And then you have this little number. There is an extra switch on the side of the cabinet, inside the cabinet, that you can't press. There are wires going to it that look factory. I'm sure they were added because I've looked on a GUNSMOKE and they're not on there. So I don't know what they were doing. Whenever they did it, it was a long time ago because the stuff looks like part of the original machine. So, you know, and then this switch, you know, nothing can hit it. However, the kicker has a similar switch. If you look, see, there's the kicker. See the switch on the side? So if there was a kicker mounted there, which there appears there was, that would, when the kicker was at rest, that switch would be open, and then it would presumably close whenever the kicker fires. I don't know, but we're still working through it. So today we do the back box. So on the previous video, we figured out what we needed, and we ordered it, and it came in. So let's see if it's correct. It looks like it was. Let's do it with one hand. I'm just going to have to magically do this, I guess. Now, you don't even have to have this in the machine, because really, those two wires that run to the one switch, if they're always closed, the game will always start when you press the start button. So you could literally just screw the two wires together, twist the two wires together, and get rid of this entire piece. But that doesn't appear to be what they did because they didn't attach the two wires together. They just took the piece out. So we looked this all up on the previous video and figured out that this is exactly what we need. So they call this one the credit unit, whereas in the manual it called it the replay unit. But it appears that they switched that at some point. So this is from an older machine, or a newer machine. And the older one that was in the GUNSMOKE, it looked to me like it was identical to this. So I'll show you the wires, and then we'll see what we can do. This is interesting. I don't know why there is a jumper here, but there must have been something mounted in the cabinet on this particular machine. I believe it was from a casino. There must have been they're blowing me up on the Twitter. I mean on the Texter. This would have been on casino. This must have been some kind of jumper, and it just happened to run near here, so they bundled it with the wires. But it has nothing to do with this this unit. And then the same with these wires. Most of these probably have nothing to do with that. So I think what I'll do is I'll pull off the extra ones real quick and get down to the real nitty gritty. So when people come in the shop, they always, if I'm working on a game, they look at it and they go, "Oh man, where do you even know how to start?" And I explain to them that everything looks real complex, but it's all real simple. It's all switches, solenoids, and lights, right? So on this thing, we don't even have lights. So we just got switches and solenoids. So you've got two solenoids here. So each one of them needs a power wire, right? So they have one running to here, and then it jumpers over to here, and then there's one running to here too. So you might think, well, if it's jumpered, why do they have a line on both? It's because then it runs off to go somewhere else. So one of these is the power coming in to the solenoid, and then the other one is going to be the power running off to, you know, whatever that was next to it that all of these went to, right? That there was another coil doing something, or it ran over to the score reels or something. So we'll need that probably whenever we put it in our machine, but we should have the wires still there. Hopefully, it depends on how close they cut them, but we might be able to just solder the old wires right back on the lug. But we'll see. So there's that. So that's two of your wires, right? And then each coil has to have a wire that basically grounds it. And by the way, it could be the other way too. This could be the ground and that could be the power, but I don't think that's usually how they do it. This is the power running to it. You know, I may have that backwards. It may be this is the neutral. They're all AC on this generation, so it doesn't really matter. But and so each one will have basically a control wire that if this gets its signal, it turns it on, right? So notice this one is just running from somewhere, right? But this one, it's a kind of a jumper that runs to this switch. So what is the purpose of that? It's so that if this wheel, if this bar here, one of these, whichever one it is, opens this switch, that will kill power to here. So it's as if this wire is ran to there. It just runs through the switch first so that the switch can possibly be opened. Now, why would they do that? Well, it's if you got too many credits on it. Let me see if I can get the thing to step up. So when this one goes in, it pulls in that ratchet over there, and it's going to push it up. And each time it does, it's going to move that. Now, I can't do it very well right now because we've got it out of the machine and it needs to be cleaned up and all that, but each time it should push this thing forward. This is not a good one to exhibit it on. What in the world? Look, there's a spring wrapped around it. Like I said, I just got this out of the thing. Let's go back the other way and see if I can get that spring off of it. What are they doing? What have they done to us? Good God. I don't know if that's going to work. Well, I mean, it's going to work, but I don't know if it's going to work for my little illustration. All right, so I've messed with it a little bit here. And this one, I still need to oil it and clean it all up. But this one, whenever you press it, it moves it backwards. Okay. So when it gets back to the 0 position, on this one it doesn't actually say 0, it just doesn't say 1, which is the same, isn't it? The absence of 1 is 0, is it not? So when it's back to 0, it has opened not 1 but 2 sets of switches. Now I looked on our schematics to GUNSMOKE and could not find why they needed 2 switches, but I now see that on this one they didn't need 2 switches either. Look, the top switch set has no wires on it. These 2 wires here are the 2 that if that switch is open because you're at 0, you cannot start the game, right? So those are not touching right now. See how I can move it? Those are not touching, so you can't start the game. Whenever you hit start, that's how they keep you from just playing as many games as you want. Well, you're at 0, buddy. You've used all your credits, buddy. The switch is open. If the switch is open, you can't hit start. Okay? So once you advance it up 1 point, 1 position, if it'll do it. Okay? So when we pulled it in, and I'll do it again here, this plunger goes in because this coil energizes. It pulls this ratchet back over here. I mean this bar. And see how it fell down behind that little groove? And so now, whenever this releases, it's going to turn the wheel 1 position. And it can keep doing that. Right? So every time it does that, where is my box? It adds a number. So we're up to 5 now. Right? Well, eventually, it's going to get up to the point where this post comes into play. So what does this post do? Oh, it just opened that switch. When we are at 9. Again, this can be adjusted, but right now we're at 9. So at 9, it opened the switch. Well, what happens the next time that we try to pull this in? It's not going to work because the switch opened. Right? So they can send voltage or the ground down this wire all they want, and it ain't going to do nothing because once it gets here to this switch, it ain't connected to anything. Now, if you were to play one credit off, I think this might reset it all the way because there's a switch stuck. I mean, a spring stuck. So now you're down to 8 credits. Well, I guess it reset it more. You're down to 4 credits or whatever it is. So now you can put more on it. But once you get up to where that bar opens it, you can't add any more credits on it. So that's what those wires do. Those wires are involved with that circuit and then this. Now we've got one more set here that we need to pay attention to. So we've got these 2 wires on this switch. We've got this wire and this wire providing power to this switch, and that same wire and this wire, solenoid, that same wire and this wire providing power to that solenoid. These 2 wires on this switch, and then the only other ones we need to worry about are these right here. These are everybody's favorite wires right here. So if you look, there is a switch right here. It's hid under the other one. See it there? And it is set up so that this little fiber piece on the back of this arm touches it. Okay? And this thing mounts in there like so. Obviously, so you can read that, right? So that switch is on the bottom, actually. Okay? So what that does is, when this pulls in, this is the one that advances a credit. So let's say you drop a quarter in, or a nickel, dime, whatever it is. This pulls in. The other side of that closes that switch. That's called an end of stroke switch, because at the end of the stroke, it closes the switch. This is not rocket science, people. Right? So that switch is directly tied to the knocker. So anytime you get a credit, not only does it advance and show you one more number on the wheel, but that it closes a switch that shorts power to the knocker and makes it hit the side of the cabinet and make a big loud noise. And so everybody in the pinball parlor, the arcade as it were, looks around and says, "Oh, look how good Ronnie is. Look, you won a free game." And I go, yeah. So, and then it lets go of it, right? So, all that to say, there are 2 wires for this switch, 2 wires for this switch, 2 wires for this solenoid, 1 wire for this solenoid, and that's all we need. So 7 wires. Did I do my math right? 8 wires, because I guess there's one runs off the daisy chain onto another one. And it looks like this one may too. Right. So we only got like 8 wires to attach. It's no big deal, people. It's not a big deal. It just looks worse. So here's the exploded drawing of the credit unit inside a casino. Here is the ratchet wheel. The only thing that I'm concerned with is that spring. I'm just trying to see where it's supposed to be. It's wrapped around that, and then it should curve down and kind of follow the line of the switch, and then it goes, from looking at mine, it looks like it can go underneath this pivot right here. And so that spring is just so that whenever this coil pulls in, it tries to push this backwards because that spring's pulling it back. So I'm just going to bend that how it's supposed to be and work on oiling everything. All right, so I bent the wire back, and I've got it under there where it's supposed to be, and now that will allow this bar to go all the way around and press that without hitting that spring. But this thing is acting up. I'll show you what it's doing and then how you fix it. This is pretty common. So this is supposed to pull in whenever you play a game, and it will subtract 1 credit, but watch what happens. It subtracted all your credits. Your 8 go bye-bye. All right. So the reason that it did that is because this is supposed to pull down into this piece here. And it's not doing that because it's all jammed up. And then whenever that goes back out, it can't grab it, and this bar lifts it up. So this should be down like that. and the spring should be pulling it down. And so when this pulls in, right, it's pulled in, but this ratchet, this thing here, has caught the back side of it, right? And then whenever it goes back out, it's going to pull this up out of the way, which will only allow it to move one position. So basically my whole problem is this is really stiff. See how I can just stick it wherever I want? Because of the spring. The spring should be pulling it all the way down, but it'll get stuck in any position basically. So this just needs to be oiled, cleaned up, got where it will move really freely. Alright, so you can take it all apart, or a lot of times you can just oil it and keep working it and it'll free itself up. So now, if I pull that in, see how the spring is pulling it down and it completely moves freely. There's nothing dragging it. It's not sticking in position anymore. I can't put it wherever I want it. Right? So let's see if that alone was enough to fix our problem. Well, if I can get it to advance. We haven't worked on this side yet. So we're advancing it. I just want to see if we fix the reset thing. Alright. So now it should only go down one position. So it went half a position, or I guess that was one position. That was about half a position, wasn't it? This thing caught the back side of it. One position. So now it's ratcheting down one position at a time. Right. So how do you fix this thing where it wasn't stepping up properly? Oil, oil, oil. Alright, so I oiled it, but I also noticed that I had this spring disconnected from when I was messing with it a second ago. So so it's sitting on its front, so the wheel's not touching anything. Backwards. Switch opened at 0. Okay, I don't think we can even go any farther back. Yeah, we can't. Okay, and so then to go forward, now I've got both springs. So whenever I pull this in, I've extended both of these springs, which is going to give a lot of energy to this bar to push this gear around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's opening at 9. Let me move it a little bit because it's opening at kind of a weird angle. That thing is supposed to be bent according to the thing we saw online, right? So maybe something like that, where it is still closed at 9. Oh, wrong way. 8, 9, and then it opens at 10. That makes a little more sense. Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. It opened at 0. Okay, so you need to get this switch clean and this switch clean. By the way, if this switch is dirty, then you can't add any credits, right? Because it's perfectly in line to this thing. So if that switch is dirty, you'll never be able to coin it up. Once you get to 0, you'll be done. Or do I have that? I've got that backwards. Yeah, this one. If that switch is dirty, this will never be able to add, right? So this will reset all the way back to 0, and then every time you put a quarter or a dime in, this won't add up because that switch is dirty and it's not conducting electricity. So you got to get that clean. If this switch is dirty, same thing. It'll just basically be open all the time. And so even if you got 20 credits, well, you can't have more than 10, but even if you have 10 credits on it, it won't know it because the power can't connect through her. So you just got to clean it and get everything moving well and all of your switches working well. But we're about ready to mount it up in there. Okay, one last thing I want to talk about. When these pull in, they pull in violently. They don't do this. They don't go, Well, it's time for me to release a credit. Click. There it goes. Operation completed. That's not what happens. It's a short, and so sometimes it's really quick, you know, so it's more like, you know, it's very quick. So whenever you're adding a credit, it's the same way. It's going to be like that. Click, 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 click. So I noticed that whenever I did that, it would add 2 credits. It would go from 0 to 2. And the reason was it was just over, there were 2 reasons. It was over traveling a little bit. So there's a coil stop down in here. So you have to adjust this screw to make up for the slack. But the spring was only wrapped around this one time, which meant that this wheel had very little spring tension on it. I've just got it so oiled up that it moves really freely, right? But what was going on was it moved so easily, winding this spring, because the spring was almost completely relaxed. It was only wrapped around one time, right? So the spring is attached here, and then it goes here. Well, it was only wrapped around once. So it was just, this spring was just barely coiled. So when this went to push it and tighten up the spring, it was really easy for it to do. So if it did very quickly, it would actually push it so far that the thing would, it was like throwing it. It would move 2 ratchets, 2 steps. So what I did was I wrapped the spring around one more time. So now it's wrapped around twice. And now whenever I do it violently, it only moves 1 because it has to push against this spring, right? So it'll probably reset much, much quicker, but it can only go 1 step because of this. So there's a balance between all of this. Lots of springs everywhere. These springs were so strong, with 2 of them on there, that it was throwing the ratchet whenever it pushed it forward. So I gave it a little more tension against that with this spring, right? And so now whenever it tries to throw it against that, this spring, since it's tighter, it's a little harder to wind because I wrapped it around one more time. This spring's going, oh, I'm only going to move 1. Okay, so interestingly enough, the 2 original screws were still in the wood. They put the screws back after they took the thing out. So another interesting thing, this red and green wire that comes up to this top coil, this thing is laying down, it mounts up in there. This red and green wire is right here. So the colors match. And then we have a yellow and red wire that runs up with it. That is the wire that goes here. So those 2, the colors match. So that's the only 2 that we have to add at the top, with the exception of the white wire. The 2 white wires they have cut short. So I'm going to have to put heat shrink tube and splice those together. But these 2 are long enough that they can reach up into the original position and go where they need to go. So I'm going to solder them directly to the original switches so that we don't have to splice it. And then down here at this end we have 2 green and black ones. You can't see a damn thing. LED lights are crap. They just suck. They're too bright. I need something less bright. Just junk. God. Almost useless. Okay, green and black wires. There's 2 of them. And there are 2 over there I would show you, except this light's a piece of crap. So there's 2 green and black ones somewhere over there. I'll find it. And then there is a red and black one. Not to be confused with the red and green one. The red and black one is part of the knocker switch. And then there is a white and orange, which is the other side of the 0 position switch. And finally, there is a orange and white, which goes to one of them as well. But all of the colors line up. They're the exact same colors. Should be easy peasy. I just can't see because I'm bleached out by the freaking LEDs. All right, folks, I got it mounted back in there. Like I said, the screws were still in the wood. I got everything soldered right back on the switch that it goes on, except for these 2 that I was talking about, the 2 power leads. But I got it heat shrinked in, and I think we're cool. They're both moving upwards and backwards, So I think we have replaced that. Now you can't see it because I haven't messed with the backlash yet on the front, so you can't see how many credits you have. But with that switch connected, we may be able to get it to start now. So last time we met this lock coil here. You need this to start the game. And they had it just rigged closed. And it's because that left red wire is broken. You can see it sticking out the side of the spool there, and then the other end of it is on the left lug there. I don't know if they did that on purpose or not, but probably not, because they could have just cut the wire at the lug. But I have ordered a new one. Also, notice that the wrapper is still on it, and the wrapper is missing from all the other coils. Except for that one. Why would that be? Probably because that hasn't been used in a very long time. Usually the lock coil gets burnt up quicker than the other ones. The paper will get all singed. But this one, they had a zip tie around it, which isn't that old, but they had a zip tie around it. And I don't know, there's somebody altered this thing way back in the day, because the extra wires and switches and stuff, it's all old wiring. It looks ancient. You know, you can't tell that it's not original, really. Okay, so I'm going to replace this coil real quick with one that's not cut. Okay, folks, we plugged it up. We got the new lock coil in there. Let's see if she'll turn on. They have rigged up a power switch. We got to fix this before I get electrokilled. So is it on? I can hear something. So the way you turn on the lock coil, it appears dead, but the way you turn on the lock coil is you hit the left flipper button. Yeah, buddy. So it pulled in, turned on all the lights in the back box, and it turned on all the lights on the playfield. Now they are twinkling, but we'll have to look into that. That may be a fuse thing. It may be a bad connection on the lock relay. They're pretty solid. Seeing a little bit of flickering. Okay, so let me set down the playfield and we'll see if it'll start a game now, since we've got the replay unit in the back. So this is where we were in the last video. We had the lock relay rigged up, but we couldn't start, and so I'm theorizing it's because that switch wasn't connected in the back. That's not the start button. That's the start button. Here we go. Boy, she's trying. She's trying. It didn't kick the ball out. Once the ball's out, let's see if the flippers work. Yes. 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 A little inside joke for you pinball aficionados. Let's see here. This should be... Now, we haven't cleaned anything under the playfield, so it might not score right. Oh, yeah. There we go. That's what we want. Advanced bonus score. Believe I will. Let's try another. That worked well. What happens if I hit this one? Perfect. Perfect. Uh-oh. The ball saver worked. This was the first game to have a ball saver. You're looking at a miracle, people. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the GUNSMOKE score. This is the coolest part of this game. So if you land in here, it lights the GUNSMOKE score. Oh, there it is. Press GUNSMOKE button on front of cabinet for highest score. Big money, big money. And it popped the ball out and popped it right back in. Big money, big money. Boom. One more time. It cheats, by the way, people. Don't think you can time it. You can't time it. Oh, look, it knocked it right out the gate, too, just like we wanted it to. It's kind of working, folks. It's kind of working. So it won't kick the ball out. All this needs worked, of course. And we still got a lot more to do in the back box. But I think we got her back functional. This is a very strange machine. I don't know why it's hacked so much. I don't know what they were trying to do with this. But at least we got that back in there. All right, folks, so it's daylight out, so I guess that's the end of this video. We at least got the thing to start. So leave your comments down below. Let us know what you think so far. Next time we'll work through the back box a little more, and then we'll try to get it to play a complete game and hopefully do some more cosmetic stuff. Give us a thumbs up for taking the trouble to film it for you. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you on the next one. Don't forget to check out my brother Donnie. There's a link to his channel down below. We work on pinball machines, arcade games, and jukeboxes. My brother Donnie works on old buildings, old vehicles, things like that. And I'm over there with him on his channel. Usually a fun time is had by all. So I'll see you over there, but we'll see you back in a couple days with the next installment of this Gunsmoke.